into the basics of how these behavioral patterns are actually formed in children, which results to their behaviors as adults in the society. According to a 1970s research by an American psychologist, Mary Ainsworth, which was grounded on another research by another American psychologist by name John Bowlby in the 1950s. The behavioral pattern of a child are formed by the kind of bond the child has with his or her first caregivers. This is what Mary Ainsworth calls attachment styles. Now, basically, what is attachment styles? Attachment styles refers to the kind of bonding or emotional connection the child or the infant had with her parents at a very young age. Now, note that I said caregivers and not parents. Why do I use caregivers? Because sometimes the first care the child gets coming into the world are not even given necessarily by the parents. We have cases of mothers who died immediately after childbirth. We have cases of mothers who abandoned their children or threw them away into the dustbin or gave them to the motherless babies' homes. This is why we used the word caregivers, to show that this must not necessarily be the parents. It could be the foster parents and all that. So, but Mary Ainsworth tried to divide the kind of attachment styles that resulted from this kind of bonding into two main parts. The first part is the secure attachment, and the second part is the insecure attachment styles. Now, I will repeat. The first part is the secure attachment styles, while the second is the insecure attachment styles. The child develops secure attachment when the first caregivers, especially the mother, now I'm saying especially the mother, not trying to exempt the father now, because both parents are supposed to be involved in the work of bringing up a child. Both parents have their different roles, but we all know that biologically speaking, the mother is closest to the child. So now, the secure attachment is formed when the mother, the first caregiver, was responsive enough to the needs of the child. This is to say that there was enough attention for that child, especially at an infant stage. Now, why is it especially at an infant stage? Because we all know that infants do not have the ability to express their feelings and emotions yet. So they rely on their caregivers to be able to interpret their cries. You get it now? To be able to interpret their cries and respond to them accordingly. So the child wants to poo-poo or has pooped on their diaper, or the child is hungry, or the child is feeling a discomfort and needs, needs a shower. The child is going to cry. That is just the best they can do. So the way the mother is able to be responsive, to be available to the child, to be responsive and to be sensitive to the needs of this child at these early stages of his or her life goes a long way to determine how the child will behave as an adult. Why? Because at this stage, the child is learning to incorporate ideas and interpret behaviors. So the way the mother and the first caregivers, because mother is also part of the first caregivers. So, but the primary first caregiver, which is the mother now, right? We have caregiver, primary and secondary caregiver. The mother is closest to the child, so she automatically becomes the primary caregiver. So the way the mother attends to the child, especially at that young age, has a way of defining to the child how adults or how other people in general behave. So the child gets to have a secure attachment when the mother was very responsive to the feelings of the child at that point. And this bonding continues to grow, and the child learns to trust the caregiver because the caregiver was always available. Now the child has built trust from the primary caregiver. Along the line in relationship, as the child continues to grow, and as the mother continues to be available to the child and sensitive to the feelings of the child who is growing, the child learns that kind of trust. You get it now? So if the mother was very nurturing, very sensitive, always available to the child, so that when the child is crying, the mother is there to know what is the problem, checking to know until the mother is able to find out why the child was crying. The ability of the mother to be able to interpret the needs of the child before the child starts speaking leads to a level of trust between the mother and the child, and between the child and every other individual, because the mother is a primary caregiver. So it leads to the kind of trust the child will have down the line while relating to other people. Now the child forms a secure attachment with the parents when his needs are met. And according to Mary Ainsworth, under the insecure attachment styles, there are two divisions. We have the ambivalent or preoccupied or anxious attachment style and the avoidant attachment style. Now, the child develops an anxious attachment style, which is of course insecure, when there is inconsistency, right, in the responsiveness and the availability of the parent. There is inconsistency in the emotional fulfillment of the child. This is to say that for one reason or the other, the parents were not able to provide a stable love, a stable security, a stable responsiveness to the needs of the child. This usually happens where the mother is a working class mother, right, that leaves the child to be made, or if the mother is passing through some emotional or domestic, issues in the marriage, so that today is very cheerful and very loving to the child and very responsive, and then tomorrow the affections are withheld because she herself is not in a suitable or a stable psychological state at that point. So if the parents are having issues, the mother might be forced to transfer the aggression to the child because she's the closest to the child, because she's always the one who's available for the child in most homes. Now, the primary caregiver, the way the primary caregiver has reacted to the child begins to grow a kind of distrust, right, in the child, so that the child doesn't trust the parent, so to say. It is not now an outright rejection like that of the avoidant child coming from the parents, but it is an inconsistent affection. Today, the parent is very affectionate, is very responsive, is very loving, and then tomorrow it is withdrawn. The parents now in this case might be very harsh or very nonchalant to the child, right? And this goes a long way also, just like the secure attachments, to build or to determine the kind of trust the child will build between himself or herself and other individuals in the society tomorrow. This is why I frown at the idea of having to plead with a woman to drop a very tasking work, or maybe change it to something less tasking so that you can be available for your kids. Like, if you understand your influence as a primary caregiver on your child, nobody will have to plead with you. It's something you will prepare in your mind that at so time or stage in your marriage, this is the kind of work you will be doing. You'll be doing something more, something you can control. It will be more of an entrepreneurial work when you're still at the stages of childbirth in your marriage, so that it's something you can control. It's something you can give attention to. Why is to give attention to your children, other than something you will have to be answerable to someone, which will limit your time and the attention you're giving to the kids, because it is going to greatly affect them. And this is also why I like to encourage people, or why I encourage the idea of taking your time to find a lifetime partner. It is not a rush. Instead of you to get someone that down the line in the marriage, you will start having issues that will distract you from the well-being of your family, or having a husband that will continue causing you agony and causing you pains, or emotional wreck that will distract you from giving enough attention to your children. Take your time. Under the second insecure attachment style, which is the avoidant attachment style, we get parents who were very neglective of the emotions of their children. Parent in this case is not necessarily absent, or does not necessarily give the child an inconsistent attention. The parent in this case actually pays no attention to the emotions of the child. Now, the first insecure attachment was where the attention was very partial. It wasn't stable. But in this case, no attention was paid at all to the emotions of the child. The parents lived their life through the child. Now, what do I mean by that? The parents imposed their own emotions, made their own interpretations to the child's needs. I'll break that down. The parent here was not sensitive enough to the feeling of their children or their child, especially the first caregiver, because the parent herself is not in touch with her own emotions. Now, because you cannot give what you don't have, right? So the parent couldn't be able to interpret the emotions of the child, and in fact sometimes got very frustrated with the emotion the child is displaying, because he himself or she herself is not in touch with their own emotions. Now, we find cases of the child is crying because the child is hungry, but the mother is instead checking, or have instead checked only the diapers and changed just the diapers. Then the child is crying again and the mother just lets her cry. She likes to cry too, as opposed to a sensitive mother that the child is crying and I've changed the diapers, she's still crying. Maybe I should feed him or her. Then I fed him or her and she's still crying. Maybe I should, shower them, bathe the child. The insensitive mother doesn't know this. So once he just tries one thing, for her, when a child is crying, it's either this or that. So if he checks, especially if the child was crying actually for being hungry, and then because the diaper is messed up, and then she just attends to the diaper and forgets about being hungry, or attends to being hungry and forgets about the diaper, or the baby is irritated because the baby needs to take his or her bath and is not attended to. And why is the mother not sensitive? Because the mother had another insensitive mother. Do you understand? That is what I mean when I say goes in chains. It goes in chains unless someone decides to break it. Now, the child in these instances has his or her emotions suppressed. That's why you find mothers that the child is crying and the mother is negligent about just neglected the child's feelings. One can't so too much. You get? Or the child is crying and the mother is doing another thing, totally negligent of it, or the child, or sometimes, and then when the child starts growing, you find this kind of mothers are the ones that their child is crying and they are beating the child to shut up. They will beat the child to cry, they will beat the child for something wrong, and then beat the child to shut up too. Emotions of the child is learning to suppress their emotions. Now, growing up and getting more sensitive to the environment and to the people around them, the child with a healthy or secure attachment grows up into a family that there is love. The child doesn't experience emotional tension between the two parents, and as long as the child knows there is peace in the home. The home is the comfort zone for the child. The child is not afraid to come back and relate with the parents. The child, in fact, develops a very cordial relationship with the parents. A close relationship with the parents, can depend on the parents for his need, and is able to open up to the parents about issues, the life challenges and life struggles. The child is longing to go home. There is trust. He's able to relate to the parents, things about himself, even personal things, because the relationship was built. There was trust in the relationship. Now, the insecure attachment styles. First of all, the anxious child grows up into very untrusting person. This is the child that doesn't really trust the parent, just takes what comes. Is very scared of approaching the parents. Sometimes he has to check very well the emotions of the parents before he speaks out on something. And he doesn't really want to be. He wants to be at home sometimes, not all the time, because the home is not so much of a comfort zone. And this person grows up a very untrusting adult. They have trust issues because growing up they could not trust their first caregiver or their primary caregiver, which was their mother, because the attention and the love required was not consistent. Now, on the other hand, the child with the avoidant attachment style grows up into a very cold-hearted adult. They show no emotion, they show no feelings, and they are very, very not close. Like they would be any other place but home, because home is terror to them. There are people that grow with very strict parents that claim to be very strict. You know, when parents say we are very strict, very disciplined, then you make yourself a terror to your kids. These people dares not do anything that will involve their parents. In fact, they grow with a lot of resentment in their hearts for their parents. And in my next video, I will tell you how these people result as adults in interpersonal relationship, which extends to marriages. I hope you've learned a lot from this video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified whenever my video drop, especially this my next video, because in this next video I am going to explain clearly how all these things result to adults in interpersonal relationship and even to marriage. So you get to know why your relationships are failed, where you have a lot of failed relationships, and why you have a lot of heartbreaks. Right? It's an interesting one. You shouldn't miss it. Thank you and God bless.